Welcome to Bold Series 3 of Cooking Architect. I'm your host Chanley Reid, and in this year's series we're focusing on homelessness within the UK. Here on this show we aim to highlight one of the 5 senses in architecture called taste, a sense that is often not considered in the design process. However, today on this show, we will explore architecture through food by getting our guest architect to create a dish that answers this question: what does architecture mean to you? Joining us on today's episode with our guest architects is Steve McCloy and Bongani Muchemwa from McCloy and Muchemwa Studios based in London, who started collaborating on architectural competitions and temporary installations when they were students. But after a decade spent with top architects in London, they have branched out into full-time practice on their own, demonstrating inventive exploration and honest pursuit in design thinking, as making each project inclusive, innovative and affordable. You might know them by their collaboration ventures with LFA. Since then, they have featured in Architects Journal 40 Under 40 and were named Reba Journal Rising Stars 2022. Recently, they've been working with private residential clients, city councils, housing developers, art galleries, major museums, and even internationally. So please help me in welcoming our special guest architects to the show. Hey guys, thank you for joining us. Welcome to the show, guys. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much.
How do you feel?
Good. Great. Yeah, happy.
Cold? I feel cold today, guys.
Yeah, it's quite cold.
Yeah.
Studio, got lights, they're quite long.
Yeah, camera, lights, action. So as today you're making a dish for us, what will you be making for us and the particular ingredients involved?
We call this the architectural sugar rush.
Okay.
Yeah. So today, as Bo says, we're doing a sweet dish.
Okay.
It's just a bit of fun. It's pancakes.
Pancakes. Ooh, nice. As I like to say, it's jokes like elevated pancakes.
We'll see.
And why did you choose to make this dish today?
Well, Bo said the title is a sugar rush, and we think that's always important to have a treat every so often.
Yes.
And we love sugar. We love.
Also, it comes from someone called architecture or little kind of installations that we do, architectural sugar rushes.
Yeah.
But that's quite fitting for like a sugary dish.
I'm looking forward to eat this. And can you let the audience know the ingredients that we have for this dish today?
Yeah. So, I mean, all good sugars.
Yes.
Nice things which are sweet. So.
Healthy sugars.
Healthy sugars, lots of fresh berries, raspberries, blueberries, blackberries, bananas, mango.
With the lemon, that's not sugar.
That's a bit sour.
Yeah, lemon, coconut, good quality honey, eggs, bacon, which we'll see if we can use or not use.
Yeah.
And see how sweet we can get it.
And Greek yogurt and mango.
We've got Greek yogurt, and for these particular pancakes, we wanted to go self-raising flour to give them a big body, so there'll be a big stack, like
fluffy.
a big fluffy cake. Yeah.
Yeah, I like the pancakes like that.
And they're sort of extra indulgent, and it's a really, really good sweet treat.
And so where do you want us to start? What's the first thing you want us to do?
Well, I think we'll have...
Steve is main chef.
Okay. So then Steve is the main chef today.
Yeah.
Me, I'm what?
Sous chef?
Sous chef. And both sous chefs as well. So we're following your instructions, Steve. So
Yeah.
you have to direct us.
Okay, well, bear with me. So we'll have a couple of stations, I think.
Okay.
I mean, there'll be one central station making up the pancake batter, and someone will be then in charge of layering up the pancakes, and someone to prepare.
Can I do that?
Yeah, and someone to prepare all the fruits and stuff into sort of a beautiful
display.
A beautiful display, that we can then add to all the
So do you need a
plates.
mixing bowl first?
So yeah, first thing would be a mixing bowl.
Okay, we've got one here.
And in there we're going to put
The
Flour.
sieve or
shouldn't need to sieve the self-raising flour.
okay.
Yeah, it's pre-sifted, so you shouldn't need to sieve
Oh, I
that.
never noticed that before. That's new. So just as we're now doing the ingredients and putting everything together, I want to ask, what made both of you want to become an architect? I know everyone's journey is different into becoming an architect and what they want to do. So what made you guys want to become an architect? You don't know you're asking.
I mean, I like how you're saying an architect, so as if we're just one.
Oh, architects.
One, architect.
Sorry.
I don't know. I mean, individually, for myself, I
Yeah.
think it's just one of those ones where you're quite good at art, you're quite good at you're decent at maths
Yeah.
or science stuff.
Yeah.
And someone tells you at career day that you could do this with your host of abilities and attributes, and that's how I'm here, I guess, as an architect.
Yeah. Oh, okay. And you?
I don't really know. I always loved drawing and art at school.
Yeah.
And even from a young age, I used to do lots of drawings in all my maths books and English books were full of drawings,
Yeah.
and as well as my art books.
Yeah.
And luckily, I fell into architecture. It just sort of appealed to me.
Oh.
I think. But
When did you find out about it?
When I was in the first year,
Yeah.
I was like, yes, good. This is
What you
actually
want to
really
do.
cool, and I would quite like to do this.
Yeah. So how did you guys find out about architecture? Because for me, it was either I was going to be a fashion designer, or I was going to be an artist. But then I was like, to be an artist, most of the time to be a good artist, you can't be alive. So that's just what I've noticed. Guys, it's a joke, okay?
Sorry, can you pass the fork,
Yeah.
please? So just
You just crack the eggs.
what I was going to do, yeah. So I'm kind of eyeballing the quantity of flour because
Okay.
imagining,
So if they were
It's
going to
kind
watch
of-
at home to the flouring, is it like one?
a couple
cup?
of cup of flour per
Do
person.
you need this for the milk?
You didn't measure it.
I didn't measure it. I'm eyeballing it, but what I'm
Okay.
going to do is add and subtract flour, but it's 1 egg per person,
Okay.
approximately. Where's the bin, by the way? Is there a bin
You
for?
can give it to me now.
So
Yeah.
you're asking where
So, yeah, 1 egg
people
per person.
find advice or...
Yeah, like advice in terms of becoming an architect. Because for me, it's kind of a similar thing. It's kind of like one of my parents just mentioned it one day. It's like, oh, you're an architect. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, what's an architect? I've never heard of an architect before.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh, this seems pretty cool, which it is very much a cool profession.
Yeah. I suppose for me it was that kind of thing about, when you're at school, you realize that you're good at these other things, and someone tells you.
Oh, do you want a whisk?
that
Sorry.
You
No,
can,
just a fork is fine.
that you can, become an architect. I think because you're quite young at that time, there's time for you to sort of really immerse yourself in what it is to be an architect.
Yeah.
I think I remember watching a documentary about Fred Lloyd Wright when I was a kid. It was like
That would have been before YouTube, though. But
it was like on TV actually. It was pretty.
that's how old it is.
Yeah.
I remember that.
But it's all ingredients.
Yeah.
And that
But no-
kind of slowly convinces you that this is a thing that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think growing up is the profession, it doesn't seem as exciting or it's kind of like, oh, it's just buildings and everything. But I think now as a profession is grown, there's a lot more exciting things
Yeah.
around architecture that makes
Yeah. I mean, there's grand designs.
Yeah, it's actually grand. Oh,
Yeah.
I used to watch Grand Designs all the time. I love Grand Designs. It's one of my favorite. Grand Designs, if you're watching, shout me.
Me too.
Shout us.
I also like the extensions with tiny temper.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's always good because you can't imagine yourself having a Grand Designs house, but you can kind of imagine yourself one day being able to have
Yeah.
some kind of flat or house.
Yeah. And even tiny homes. Tiny homes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, micro homes. That's
Yeah, micro homes. Yeah. On YouTube, I watch them. Because I'm like, should I downsize and get a small house? But yeah.
Right, we can put the kind of measure of
Nope.
how much flour would be in here
Okay. So
in our recipe if we share it. But this is the kind of texture you want to go for with 1 egg per person. So it
What
makes
happens next is the milk.
let me show the camera.
so it makes kind of like a crumbly,
Okay.
a crumbly texture,
not-
just egg and flour.
Yeah. That's about 2 cups, no? Or 3.
Yeah,
Looks like scrambled eggs.
there's going to be
Yeah.
absolutely there's going to be loads of batter here.
So what else do you want us to do in the meantime?
So the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to make the batter up.
Okay.
But
Do you just peel the mango, the banana, the fruits?
yeah, you can start. I think you could start with probably chopping the lemons and doing something beautiful with the mango and bananas.
And this is for...
I think Bo is going to be the stacker
Oh, okay.
because the stacker will work in layers.
Okay.
Yes, chef.
So I cut up. So
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, what challenges have you faced when deciding to become an architect or since being architects? Any challenges that you might have come across and you're like, be honest, everyone here is watching. This is the honest kitchen.
Yeah. I think it's because it takes so long to like qualify, and then it takes so long to actually get the skills to even be in a, practice
Yeah.
and working somewhere, and let alone like thinking about doing your own thing. So it just takes so long to do anything.
Yeah.
Even building anything takes so long.
Yes, that is so true.
Patience is the main virtue I found of
Yeah.
Being an
of
architect.
staying the long course and getting
Yeah.
through to do part 3 and
Yeah.
working in an office. So even when Bo and I started a small studio, which we run, McCloy Muchemwa,
Yeah.
it wasn't like we just opened the doors overnight and have a
Yeah.
semi-successful office. Actually, we've been working in other practices and then trying to do a bit of side hustle, and then
Yeah.
it took years to build up a reputation, even just through doing some of our small installations and things.
Yeah.
To the point where we've now started to get bigger commissions on housing projects or private residential work or working with
Yeah.
museums and things and art galleries.
Yeah.
But patience was the big thing, wasn't it?
I mean, we're still not like established architects. We're being called up to be a smaller part of the bigger part.
Picture.
Yeah, but even that's taken so long, and I think that's a challenge if you're if you're impatient. So I suppose what it is that allows you to go the stretch is that you're liking or you're loving the process. You're loving the small bits, the small challenges, and actually the small projects are actually quite interesting.
Yeah. I think even with like architecture, it can be like a labor of love because there's kind of like this romance between the architect and the buildings that they make. And then after you finish, you have to like let it go.
Yeah, you had to let it go.
Yeah, because you spend so much time with it.
With it.
And I think that's why a lot of people say that to be an architect, you have to have the passion for it because you just spend so much time on creating something, putting your whole heart into it, and then just to be like, bye.
Gosh.
Yeah.
Just like, see you later. Sounds very sad and daunting, but
I remember like our last installation, we I don't know, I think it was part of our contract really to kind of go back and have a look.
yeah.
But the having a look of it was like us, like, oh, could I clean it?
So I could change this.
Still trying to, still trying to. And we had one project where we used to come with a mop and bucket,
Oh,
like every Saturday morning, and just
Oh, my baby.
like
You're like asked to like have a look at it
Yeah.
and then report back if it's been damaged or anything. Because we do a lot of things in the public realm, so it's expected that things will,
right.
Be damaged.
be
Yeah.
damaged. But because
You designed it, you want it to stay perfect. Stay perfect and pretty.
Yeah.
So, and what made you like? I think you kind of mentioned it earlier
that's
in
getting
terms
good.
of. Oh, is that good?
So what I'm doing here is I'm just gradually mixing in just milk
Okay.
and just with the fork. But you could use a whisk.
Yeah.
I always use a fork. Just getting some air into it and just getting a kind of runny but quite thick batter. Just making sure
good
there
colour.
are no lumps of flour left.
Go.
Yeah, if you want to whisk that up a little bit more. Just,
How do you want the mangoes to be cut as well?
I don't know. However you like, beautifully. Do you know how to do like long strips of them?
Okay, I could try.
Or little
Let's
cubes.
see. I was gonna do cubes, but maybe I don't know.
Just whatever's going to look beautiful stacked around it. I think it just,
If you want, okay, let's do
As you
half
like.
long strips and half cubes and see how that goes. Yeah, so I think you mentioned it previously before, but what made you both want to join forces and start your own practice? Because starting a practice does take a lot of labor and love, and to have projects first start like in the go ahead, like when you just start as well. What made you join forces and be like, you know what, this is what we should do together?
Yeah, we didn't join forces because we
I always
were
think
because
that,
we.
Sorry, I always think that we started our practice in first year of architecture. So go, Steve.
Yeah,
I can explain it.
Okay, go on.
Because, you know, I think it's lucky because we didn't join forces to take on a particular project,
Yeah.
or to even go after a particular project. It's just
Yeah.
we had been friends and helping each other out a little bit at university,
Yeah.
mainly because, you know, you have to make friends on the first day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bo was from Africa. I did recently.
Yeah.
You know, at that point we were both relatively new to the UK.
Yeah.
Just a couple of years here doing A levels and things.
Yeah.
So we had a little bit of a common outlook compared to
Yeah.
other people who had completely different outlooks.
Yeah.
And we were able to help each other out and have fun. And
Yeah.
I think after uni, we just thought, oh, it might be fun to enter a competition here or a competition there. And then
Yeah. So do you encourage architecture students to enter architecture competitions? Because you know sometimes there's
Ooh, that's a
stigmas.
hot topic, isn't it?
it's a bit of a hot topic.
Because there's so much like stigma around it
that's
that
good.
it's kind of like you need to know the judges before you kind of enter architecture competitions and all that kind of stuff. And it's kind of like I think Bo, you're like,
I don't know.
We entered,
Maybe it's something I missed. Do you have to know the judges?
that's what some people say. Like, oh, it's kind of like it's who you know.
is this
You know,
good for-
yeah, you can do that one.
that one we'll do for the batter, right?
Okay,
And then later on, if we're going to do some other bacony things, we might need a separate one.
okay.
But let's start this one. If you could show me how the hob works.
Oh yes,
Okay,
this hob
what's
is
I think when we
You have to
started
place it.
doing
yeah.
competitions, it was just a lot of fun. We went trying to win a competition. We always said, if we ever win a competition, that would be like the worst thing ever.
Why?
So we have to like build it. I think
Nice and hot, yeah.
as we started doing more and more of them, we sort of kind of realized that this is sort of like a place where we can start doing a bit of research, start to think about what our architecture will be about
Yeah.
in the future if we ever really become anything,
Solid.
solid.
We've definitely designed a lot more buildings than we've done.
Yeah.
Oh, is it?
Probably with like six or seven big buildings for competitions and
You should
for
see our
permissions.
structure.
So how do you
We're actually
feel?
on, you know, the architect's quite nerdy to have the folders, all the jobs.
Yeah.
But I think we've entered more than 200 bids and competitions, and we've actually done designs for over one. Currently we're on project number 99,
Oh wow.
Yeah,
which is quite interesting as a competition.
And how do you feel like, going through being shortlisted for projects and then not finally going through to the final end?
We get to keep the intellectual property. It's how we said.
It's true.
But if you think of it as research, it feels
Okay.
better, but it's always devastating.
Yeah.
And there's been a couple of great ones where it hasn't worked out, and you're just so upset. But then sometimes friends of ours have won, and you're kind of like, are you happy for them? Are you not? It's difficult.
But do you make friends with some of them as well? Okay, you're heating up.
Yeah.
Yeah, you make friends with people as
Yeah.
you kind of bump into them all the time,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you see their name. Some of the same names come up and down.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing that you would encourage, as you said, encouraging students if they're going to get into that, is not be discouraged straight away, and don't always see it as don't see it as defeat or that you're wasting your time, because
Yeah.
essentially you're doing research.
Yeah.
That you can use in the future probably
you can-
again.
For sure, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the amount of just repeating
I don't know. We'll check if it's hot enough.
of things that we've done in the past as competitions was like quite.
Yeah.
Maybe 5 is the maximum. Anyway, sorry. So, Bo, I think you're done with the batter.
Yeah.
What you need to do is, if you can get one of the big plates, can you get a big plate, because that's going to be your stacking thing.
Yes,
Once-
complete.
And then I'll need probably a ladle and a flipper. What's a flipper called?
spatula.
Yeah, can I get the plastic one? Actually.
What's it called?
And then is there a ladle, like a big spoon or a ladle?
This.
Yeah, that'd be all right.
So I want to ask as well, what inspires you the most in architecture?
And we cut that for bow.
Yes.
We're going to put lemon in between each layer.
Okay. What inspires you the most to become, like, inspire you with your architecture? You know, in architecture school, you learn a lot about looking at presidents and looking at all these things to help inspire you. Where's most of your inspiration comes from?
Oh, main presidents.
Yeah. But like, you must have a favorite architect or a favorite building or a favorite art piece or something.
I think we go through phases.
Yeah.
Well, maybe earlier on we used to go through phases. Like, I think our earlier phase was Japanese architecture.
Okay, sorry.
I love Japanese architecture.
Yeah.
I used to love a lot of like Dutch architecture, like red and cool house type stuff.
Yeah.
Heads of the neuron used to be a thing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I think the more you're in it, the more you're like doing stuff, the more what is inspiring becomes much closer to home.
Well, we do love. I mean, both saying we do love actually visiting buildings and the experience of architecture itself.
Yeah. I think
That's where it's quite exciting for us, and that actually is because you can. Yeah, it is an exciting. This is the exciting thing on its own terms.
Yeah. Because for me, I would like to say that culture has a really big part to play in our architecture and the spaces that we experience.
Yeah.
Because if you think about, like, for example, if you have a car and you leave the car there for long periods of time and no one uses it, it starts to rust.
Oh, yeah.
But if you had people going in and out of the car and using the car wouldn't rust so quickly. So I think, like, even the spaces in the UK, like today I was even researching and just like looking at homelessness in the UK. And there's actually over 33,000 empty council flats that's not being used. Like, they've just been boarded up and just disregarded of. And even some of the work that you do, which is very innovative and stuff, if they kind of bring on people who have that innovation or that kind of skills, there's so much you could really use those spaces for.
I mean,
do.
And I was saying that actually the inspiration becomes much closer to home, as in the things that you were just saying, the opportunities that you can start to think about what could be.
That's not.
Yeah.
For those spaces.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that was important for us was when there's at university there's a problem some people have with making architecture real for themselves.
Yes.
And they don't they think the academic seems to heat up a bit more. But so this first one, as with pancakes, the first one might be a bad one.
It's a practice.
Because a new hob doesn't get hot.
This is for you, Bob.
Yeah, people struggle to get. People might struggle to get that it's real and that there's a value that they can bring with their designs and with the way they come up with concepts about the built environment, and that becomes more inspiring the more that you see it happening.
Yeah.
So, this one is a dud. That definitely day to day, actually having feedback and seeing social value or just artistic value in what you've actually produced. Really exciting.
Yeah. And with both of your backgrounds, because you said that you were born in Zimbabwe and you grew up in Kenya.
Yeah, I was born in Nairobi and grew up
Nairobi. Okay. So with your backgrounds and seeing how the environment, because a lot of the work that you do is kind of like urban space, kind of like designs as well, that I'm aware of. You do other things as well, guys. They do other things.
Yeah. It's gonna be out on Instagram soon.
Yeah. So like when you look at the spaces that you grew up around and the community and how the sense of how people are very much connected, and then you come to the UK and then you look at the community and the urban spaces surrounding, even when you design it, do you see a comparison or like a difference between the people and how they use spaces and how spaces are designed? Yeah. Like, what are some of the examples of things from back home you would say that could possibly be so useful in the time that we live now? Because especially after COVID, a lot of people are very much isolated. You have digital realm, like the digital world. Everyone's on social media, but they're by themselves. So you can have 1,000 friends, but really you don't have 1,000 friends. Like you might have one friend or two friends. So what are like kind of the comparisons and the differences that you notice, and culture shocks, like coming from home, like back home, and then coming to UK and you're like, oh, this is very different. This is very.
Oh,
like,
can I start?
Yeah.
Everyone is so self-conscious about the curtain choices and my perfect carpet and my little front garden, and I think domestically I would never seen people take such care and like every little detail of the house has to be perfect. Whereas back home everything was very it's just much more casual. You know, you can have a old kitchen and not care. And, you know, our house had a concrete floor, you know, which was just painted. But it was fine, you know, and we did a lot of outdoor living, and it was just very easy and chill.
Yeah.
And you didn't really worry about not having a
fanciest
perfect quality finishes. And I think that easiness and informal things as well was really strong in Kenya. I mean, they have an issue with slums. But actually, slums also have a lot of clever things about them too, in the way they pop up informally, produce networks, and it just the overall informal feeling was something that Europe has really not got.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
and
feels
rules.
like you're comparing apples and oranges. Or
This one is bad.
Because it's so different. The informality that you're talking about, and sort of, I've always thought like British homes are very like padded up. It's obviously because the climate, you know, layers of insulation, just like layers of like finishes on the inside, things. But houses in Zimbabwe are quite sort of very Aryan, sort of quite simple, because I guess it's the climate. I mean, that's one stark difference. And obviously the cities where I come from are much more sparsely populated. It's a bigger country with a smaller population, and there's a distinct sort of gaps between the countryside and
the city. Can I jump in and say, like, in some of our earlier projects, we've done a few designs for houses in Africa.
Okay. Yeah.
But we've also tried to take some of the thinking from traditional African types back to
The more
public buildings and residential buildings in the UK as well.
Okay.
Things like not packing your 2 up, 2 down flat room next to rooms, but actually pulling apart. We did a project called the Unpicked House. We pulled apart each function of the house into its own little pavilion or building, and then put it under a big roof. So there was a free space flowing between the rooms, and it felt more like a homestead that you might find in Zimbabwe.
My grandma's compound is a bit like that, without the middle part having a roof.
Okay, don't zoom in on this first pancake. This one's just the base.
This is the practice.
This is the base because of the
foundation.
The pan was not hot enough. So that's the foundation. So between each layer, Bo, you do just sprinkle a tiny bit of sugar and a few squeezes of lemon.
Okay.
Just a few with, you know.
That looks good.
And now it should be hot, so the pancake should come out layer by layer a bit more easily.
Yeah.
And this is not a healthy recipe. Like, I do use a lot of. I've actually asked for the cheap oil.
But cheap oil kind of gives it a bit of the crispiness.
Yeah, cheap oil gives you a crispy taste, and there's just something really nice about it that you just can't get with. Yeah. So a couple of dollops for each one, and it should. Once the pan's hot, it should go.
Nice and crispy.
Make a good sizzle as soon as it goes in.
So I also want to ask as well, even saying that, because that was one of the questions I was going to ask in terms of what are some of the principles you use and like elements in design of your projects, and which you said is kind of like looking at the architecture of where you're from and kind of bringing those principles into the designs that you bring now, which I would say, like you were saying, the sugar rush, which is like colorful. You know, back home, like I'm Jamaican, so back home all the architectures are like colorful. You have brightly painted bars and all that kind of stuff, where it kind of shows a sense of personality.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes in the UK, like the architecture doesn't have much. There's personality. Like I guess it's British.
Yeah.
British, it's like bricks and
I
stuff.
suppose some of that it comes from an interesting, weird misunderstanding of history. Because a lot of like this neoclassical architecture comes from Greece. And it was all very colorful.
Yes. Yeah.
So maybe the soft stuffiness of it is like a misunderstanding.
Yeah, as well. But like when I was growing up in Kenya, the public transport, like routine buses, is not a thing.
Yes.
Everyone uses matatus, which is like I don't know how you call it. It's like privately run
Like
minibus services, but the side of every minibus is painted by the owner. So we have incredible graphics and like superheroes painted on, or like religious themes, or Manchester United paint all over the side. It's like extremely exuberant.
Yeah.
But
They're like those ones that you see in India.
Yeah, they were just extremely
like
exuberant and
call them?
colourful, and self-expression applied to lots of stuff like shops and buses, and I think in the UK the only expression you see on the street is kind of like
Graffiti?
corporate logos or that kind of thing, and it's not as exciting. It's not kind of as expressive as a visual culture in the city.
And then that's what I think sometimes, because I would say I would explain British architecture to be very grey.
Okay.
Grey and brown, like that's how I explain like it to be, kind of like grey and brown, and but you have like obviously with like, that's nice, with like colonialism as well, and within your countries, and how do you think that kind of changed the way the architecture is a little bit in your home countries, or?
There's a big British and European influence in Kenya, for sure. That some of the most exciting buildings that I'd seen as a kid in Nairobi were kind of post-war European architects coming in, and they were doing brutalism. So in Nairobi City Centre, there's an amazing conference centre, and the Congress of the Kenyan Parliament is in a massive, amazing brutalist district.
You can say the same as Zimbabwe. My home city, Bulawayo, has this big brutalist tower that my mom used to work in, the National Railways of Zimbabwe. Those were like actually one of the things that were like quite inspiring for me growing up. I used to go to my mom's work and just like for the point of just going up the tower and having a look. And I think there was a time, wasn't there? That, I mean, we weren't alive. We're kind of me and Bo are kind of 80s. Yeah. Born in the 80s. But there was a modernism movement in Africa which related to independence movements and growing kind of socialist politics that was in Africa, and then some of those ideas did translate from the West, but they weren't the same as those stuffy British colonial things. Yeah. So my reason to be in Kenya was that my grandparents' generation moved there probably in the end of the 1950s, 1960s. So to work in businesses, but they were not quite old-fashioned colonialists. They were more kind of cashing in on Kenya being really good at becoming a modern country after the war.
Okay.
Boomtown.
It was a really boomtown in Kenya because...
Is that what they call it? Or you just say?
I'm just sort of expressing what kind of opportunities would have been there.
Yes.
Because there would have been like a population of, East Asians coming in as well. Similar, quite the same as Zimbabwe, I would suppose. And I went last year. I was just sort of walking around Harare and thinking, wow, this place looks like it's stuck in the 80s. Because that was when
a bit more sugar than that.
All of those kind of,
It's supposed to be a sugar rush.
Little boomy was sort of vibrant, and there was this sort of optimism, and it actually expressed itself in a whole weird, interesting architecture that's kind of, embracing the technologies, also kind of borrowing in a very kind of literal way some of the motifs.
Yeah.
We sound like we're experts in the historic architecture of our home countries. It's actually not true, because me and Bo essentially, and this is true for me probably more than Bo, is that I've got I've had a very much a child's opinion of growing up in Africa. I had a fantastic childhood because it's a wonderful place to be a child, but I didn't really become an adult until moving to Europe. So all the hard parts of life that you get when you're an adult.
Yeah.
I've had here, so I've never had a horrible experience. I've never had a horrible experience with Africa, and really, I didn't have an intellect. You weren't able to digest
what you were seeing,
what I was seeing until later. So
to later on into life, but it kind of influenced you, like you said, Bo, when going to like the building your mum worked in and going up the tower. I'm pretty sure it still had like an impact on the way you think, and maybe even influenced you wanting to become an architect. So even, for example,
I'm not a fan of brutalism, but still, that was quite inspiring.
But it's still kind of like, oh, like wow, kind of being a child and seeing that it's like, oh, like it's like seeing a spaceship.
It was more like, I can't believe anyone designed stuff like this. Like it's a weird, it's amazing. It just felt like people had to be crazy to be doing these things. So
because I think then he's gone against the rules of what architecture is, like the modernism kind of like time. So it's kind of like I guess people say like, many people say that architects think they're artists.
Right. Do you think we're artists?
Do you think you're artists?
yeah, I think we are artists actually. Like we can be quite divas with doing like artistic type drawings and looking at other paintings to inspire our work. It sounds like very old fashioned.
Yeah.
But
that's what you kind of taught in school as well.
Yeah. Well,
I think we try and balance it. We try and balance it a bit by.
And even with like the benches you've collaborated with NFA, your Sugar Rush benches, like you have urban play playground. And even that's like one of your famous projects, and also like what do you call the dots, the orange one where you jumped off it.
That's the Boys Are Back in Town.
Yeah, the Boys Are Back in Town. Yeah. With those, like your favorite project, what was some of the challenges when designing those benches and coming up with the ideas of it for those benches?
I would say challenges is interesting. I think when you're designing anything in the public realm, the challenge is about how the materials, the kind of forms and shapes that you're designing are gonna be kind of, how they're gonna be durable, how people are gonna interact with them, how they're gonna be durable, and in some ways, you're doing things that are almost kind of the opposite of each other. You want it to be inclusive. At the same time, you want the thing to defend itself.
Yeah.
So that's a challenge in itself to sort of make sure the thing survives the sort of daily bashing it's going to receive.
Yeah.
And actually be inclusive. I think that's usually the challenge.
Because, there's a lot of talk in terms of like public benches, in terms of the ones that are permanent, and how they kind of like don't cater for those who are homeless and all that kind of stuff. If you were supposed to design a bench for those who are homeless, how would you go about it? That's a big question.
I mean, I don't know. It's usually the case that you're not supposed to design.
Yeah. So if you were supposed to, how would you go?
I genuinely, this project that it's always in my mind. Do you know Pub Architects?
No.
They're great. They're one of our friends. They designed this duct that you could go inside.
Oh, okay.
It was almost like the perfect sort of disguise of something that's like a duct, but you can go inside and literally just occupy it. It's like, how can you change things so that they can disguise what they are but be occupiable?
It was a bit of like a guerrilla inhabitant of the city.
Yeah. And I think then, because it's always in my mind, a few years ago, I got a student to kind of like do a project where you could inhabit statues, little places in the city that are kind of like cavernous, like telephone boxes, old telephone boxes that you can use, planes for like statues. How can you start kind of making those things be able to be opportunistically inhabitable?
Yeah.
And generous,
Yeah.
just including benches generally in the city is a great way to just incorporate diversity, inclusivity for people that need to sit on benches. And there's often like a massive shortfall of bins,
Yes.
benches, public toilets.
Public toilets is a big one, and parks. And one thing I've noticed that when you travel in other places in Europe, they have water fountains.
Oh, I was going to touch on the public toilet thing.
Okay, go ahead.
I have a measure of how good a public building is.
Yeah.
You just have to look at the
Toilets. Oh, why? How? Like if it's
Because how generous the space is, how it's well kept, and how like thoughtful the design is. Just sort of says this institution is inclusive.
yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah. So like if you go to the Tate, wonderful.
Nice toilets.
Yeah, nice toilet. The British Library,
Nice toilet.
really nice toilet.
V&A.
Yeah, V&A has really nice toilet.
But those are places that might have a perceived barrier for a homeless person to use, or etc. Whereas the London Underground toilets, which a lot of homeless people use for washing,
There's London Underground toilets.
yeah, but they're very bad condition. They actually are being currently refurbished, but
I didn't even know they
but
were.
they have they're very poor. Very poor spatial quality. They don't feel safe. They're damaged.
They're not monitored either. I'm guessing they're not monitored.
They are monitored, but
Oh, okay.
but there's a lot of antisocial behaviour that happens in them, especially in the male toilet. And it's just, that's not what London should do, or like a great city should do. So I think just being, of course you can't solve homelessness with a bench, but if you just design it from a perspective of generosity, it could work. Also, I mean, just let people have it so that it's not hostile deliberately.
What's that Sui Fujimoto project that he did as a student, where he was occupying the city through public?
I think you were telling me this.
Yeah, he was like, I can't find a project to save my life. But he was describing this sort of place in Tokyo where he was homeless, essentially, sort of kind of thinking of himself as homeless, but actually then waking up and going to the cafe, that would have been his sort of kitchen, and going to the library to have a little bit of a chill, that would have been sort of his living room, and then going to the park, that would have been his sort of kind of like, study, sort of, another area.
Well, it's unfortunately, it's the reality for a lot of homeless people in a city like London, where not all homeless people are sleeping on the streets. It might be couch surfing, but then the rest of their
Sort of like
their world is dispersed amongst multiple locations.
But if it then becomes the quality of those dispersed little infrastructures that actually makes life pleasant.
Don't forget
If you're homeless.
Yes.
lemon and sugar bowl, please.
And I wanted to ask a question as well in terms of with your designs and having your experience of where you grew up. Is it important that even the benches you design kind of fosters community? Because even I looked at your urban play bench, and it wasn't like in a place where it wasn't really used much. But then when you put it there, then people were like, kids were going to play there. Is that important for like community to be fostered within the projects that you design?
Yes. Yeah, and what we liked about... So there's a difference between when we do building designs and when we do interventions. We always think our public interventions, like the urban playground, should be like a quick and big, like a bold transformation of the space. And then it shows possibility. So the idea of that was to show possibilities about what London streets could be like. And that's a really good... we did it deliberately at high volume, like it's loud and shouty because it was a temporary project. So yeah, 100%. Just getting people to use and interact with one another in their streets.
Yeah.
And to think that a street is not just a place where there's shop,
I think
high street chains or, someone else's property, but actually you should be able to sit there for a long dwell time. You can take the City of London does not have a public child's playground in the square mile.
the square mile.
Oh, wow.
So that was the first playground in the public playground in the square mile, for example. So that was one of the reasons that project came about.
When I think about it, growing up, I feel like there was more playgrounds around than they are currently now. Because when you think about like going on public transport, I think of going past parks and stuff, you don't really see places where they have like swings and because they say that those places kind of gather like gangs and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Which is quite sad. So that means our spaces are not made for dwelling. They're kind of just like a quick pass by and then go quickly, like welcome to stay here. And I think that's the issue with some people who are rough sleepers or those who experience like homelessness and they are on the streets. But before I go into any more questions, we're going to go on a quick break and we'll be back to finish off the questions and finish off the pancakes and then try the dish. So see you soon, guys. If you have made it this far through the episode, I would like to say a huge thank you for staying tuned. Before we get back into the episode, please take a moment to subscribe to the Bow Platform channel, like, comment, and reshare. It is our mission to impact and change the narrative of how we use, see, and interact with architecture. Also, I would like to say a massive thank you to the Royal Institute of British Architecture for sponsoring this year's series of Cooking with an Architect. RIBA London aims to bring awareness to the work of architects through providing support and education opportunities for architects across the UK. So if you're an architect and would like to find out more about what they do and would like to join one of the RIBA London groups, links will be placed in the description box below. And as this year, we are focusing on the theme of homelessness, we would like to bring awareness to one of our collaborators for this year called Under One Sky, which is a volunteer-led charity that aims to use education, compassion, and collaboration to end homelessness in the UK and beyond. They empower individuals, companies, and public organizations to be a part of the change, transforming lives and growing a utopian community together. To learn more about Under One Sky, the links will be placed in the bio below. So please stay tuned as we go back into the episode. Hi guys, we have finally plated up our dish. I'm so excited to try it. It smells and looks amazing. So do you want to go first or? Steven's not eating with us. It's a bit suspicious.
Yeah, I know. What's going on?
Me and Bo are going to be the ones to try. So do you want to go first or try?
Yeah,
Okay, you go first.
Not again.
We're going to have some pancakes. And this is Greek yogurt. Did we mention it in the beginning? I think we did.
I think we did.
It's Greek yogurt and blueberries and mangoes and everything. Is it good? Oh, I want bacon.
And I'll try a little bit.
Are we allowed to finish this off camera?
Yes, we are. We're going to eat all of it after camera. Yeah. This is good. I'm actually going to make this when I go home.
Yeah.
This is really good. Wow, thank you guys for coming on the show today.
Thank you. Thank you
so
for inviting us.
Happy you decided to be on it. Decided to come and cook for all our audience. Make sure to follow the recipe. Online is going to be on our website. And also cook with us. And any last final words for those on the camera, those watching?
Huh? Just remembered. No, I mean, yeah, just remember to have a sugar rush every once in a while.
Yeah.
Keep it
Yes.
not too serious.
Yes.
You know, lots of fruit and
We're super
add some colour and
grateful
life, yeah.
that you've invited us, to be honest. Yeah.
Aw,
There you go.
thank you for agreeing. That's
Yeah.
the main thing. Thank you so much. Well, guys, thank you so much for watching and tuning in today. Make sure to stay tuned to watch our final episode next week. Remember to subscribe, like, and comment on the Bold platform, YouTube channel, and follow us also on all our social media handles. If you want to know more about these guys, the links and for the social medias and the website will be in the description box below. And until next time.
Always wanted to do that.
Until next time. Bye.
Yeah, we just finished cooking and it's been amazing, great. The team have been quite helpful. I didn't know we could cook. We rarely cook, so amazing.
Today's episode with Bon Steve was really amazing. I truly learned like a lot through what they do in terms of like urban play and the public realm, and the fact that they're stemming back into residential and housing. It was really good to speak with them and cook with them, and also their dish, the Sugar Rush dish, was so tasty. I would say call them the kings of Sugar Rush now, because you know they love a bit of colourfulness. So yeah, definitely enjoy that episode and definitely one to watch.